Before we dive in, if you love epic tales of war, strategy, hit that subscribe and like button, turn on notifications, and join our growing legion of warriors. Now, let's begin. Imagine this. You are an alien, part of an advanced civilization that has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. Your species has mapped the stars, tamed the forces of nature, and conquered the boundaries of space itself. But there's a whispered legend among the elder races. A terrifying warning passed down through generations. A name never spoken aloud. A species that no empire dares to challenge. Humanity. How did a primitive, war-torn race from a backwater planet rise to become the most feared force in the cosmos? It all begins with a secret the universe tried to bury, and a mistake the galaxy will never forget. At the dawn of interstellar civilization, the great empires of the cosmos saw Earth as nothing more than an insignificant speck. A planet filled with primitive, short-lived creatures barely crawling out of their own gravity well. The galactic community had strict rules about early contact interference, ensuring that pre-spacefaring species developed at their own pace. But in the shadow of these laws, something darker was at play. The Zorvath Dominion, a ruthless expansionist empire, did not believe in such restrictions. They had a habit of testing primitive species, studying their reactions under pressure, determining if they could be manipulated or harvested for resources. To them, Earth was nothing more than an experiment, a controlled laboratory where they could observe how a species reacted to hardship, oppression, and war. They began subtly, introducing anomalies into Earth's development, mysterious plagues that vanished as quickly as they appeared, unexplained disasters that reshaped entire regions, sudden technological leaps that should not have been possible. The goal? To see if humanity would break or bend under pressure, to determine if they were prey or predators. At first, humanity reacted as expected. They fought wars, divided themselves over petty conflicts, struggled to unite under a common banner. The Zorvath watched with amusement, confident that Earth would either destroy itself or be ripe for conquest. But something unexpected happened. Humans adapted. Unlike any species before them, they refused to accept their fate. Every challenge, every engineered catastrophe, only made them stronger. Wars didn't just end in ruin, they ended in innovation. Plagues didn't wipe them out. They forced humanity to develop vaccines and treatments faster than any other race in recorded history. Every attempt to weaken them only pushed them forward. The Zorvath grew uneasy. This was not the expected outcome. By the time Earth had reached the brink of the space age, humanity had become something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that thrived on conflict. While other races sought peace and stability, humans evolved under chaos, turning disaster into progress at an unprecedented rate. It was at this moment that the Zorvath made their greatest mistake. In a desperate attempt to reassert control over their secret experiment, they sent a single warship, one of their finest, to Earth's orbit. The plan was simple. Stage an invasion, force humanity to submit, and erase all traces of their interference. After all, how could a primitive species possibly resist a fleet armed with energy weapons, gravity manipulation, and shields that had withstood the might of entire star empires? But they underestimated the true nature of humanity. When the Zorvath warship appeared over Earth's skies, the world watched in awe and terror. Every nation, every leader, every soldier realized at that moment they were not alone. Yet instead of surrendering, instead of bowing in fear like every other primitive species before them, humanity did something that no one in the galaxy expected. They fought back, not with energy weapons, not with superior technology, but with raw, unrelenting defiance. Within hours, militaries across the world were mobilized, scientists scrambled to analyze the intruder, and every weapon humanity had ever created was pointed skyward. Nuclear warheads, experimental railguns, prototype spacecraft, everything was thrown at the unknown enemy. The Zorvath, caught off guard by the sheer ferocity of the resistance, found themselves overwhelmed by a species that had never before faced an alien threat. Humanity didn't just fight with tactics, they fought with desperation. They fought like a species that had spent its entire history clawing its way up from the dirt, battling extinction every step of the way. The warship, despite its superior firepower, took damage. Its shields flickered. Its hull was scorched. The unthinkable had happened. A primitive, pre-spacefaring species had wounded an interstellar warship. The Zorvath captain, now fully aware of the miscalculation, issued an immediate retreat. The experiment was over. Humanity was not prey. They were something else entirely. Something far, far worse. But the damage was done. Humanity had seen the truth. They knew they were not alone, and more importantly, they knew they were being watched. And just like that, the galaxy's greatest nightmare had begun. The Zorvath Dominion had made a catastrophic mistake. Their experiment had failed. Not because they had been discovered, but because humanity had proven the one thing the galaxy feared most. They were unpredictable. Across Earth, the sight of the retreating alien warship did not inspire relief. It ignited something far more dangerous. Curiosity. Every government, every scientist, every military strategist now had proof of alien life. And more than that, they had proof that these beings were not gods, not invincible conquerors, but something that could be hurt and could be defeated. Humanity's response was immediate. Nations that had been rivals for centuries united overnight. Old grudges between superpowers were set aside. Secret projects that had once been locked away in hidden research facilities were suddenly shared on a global scale. Every technological field, rocketry, artificial intelligence, weaponry, genetics, was given a single, undeniable focus: survival. The world's brightest minds worked tirelessly to reverse-engineer every trace of data they had gathered from the alien ship. Scorched fragments retrieved from its brief engagement were studied in underground labs. The unusual energy readings from its shields were recorded, analyzed, and tested in deep space prototypes. Every lesson learned was turned into a weapon, and then humanity's paranoia took over. If one alien species had seen Earth as an experiment, how many others were watching? How many more saw humanity as nothing more than insects, waiting to be crushed under their boots? The first Earth defense fleet was born out of that paranoia. It wasn't impressive, at least not at first. A collection of hastily modified spacecraft, repurposed from existing military and scientific designs. But it was a start, and more importantly, it sent a message. We know you're out there, and we are preparing. But what humanity didn't realize was that their defiance had already shaken the galactic order. The Zorvath Dominion had never lost a confrontation with a primitive race, not once. The mere idea of a pre-spacefaring civilization forcing one of their warships into retreat was unthinkable. The ruling caste was furious. The experiment had been a disaster, and there was only one way to ensure it did not spread: total eradication. And so the Zorvath returned. This time, they did not send a single warship. They sent a fleet, 24 battlecruisers, each armed with weapons that could turn continents into craters. Their orders were simple: wipe Earth from existence, make an example of humanity, so that no other species would dare dream of resisting. But what they found was not the primitive, frightened race they had expected. Earth had changed. The moment the alien armada entered the solar system, they were met with something the Dominion had never seen before: a species that had studied them. Humanity had spent years preparing for this moment. Their weapons were still crude by galactic standards, but their tactics, their brutality, was something the galaxy had never encountered. The first strike came before the Zorvath had even reached Earth. Humanity did not wait to be invaded. They had learned from their own history: strike first, strike hard, and never give the enemy a chance to recover. The Dominion fleet was bombarded with long-range missiles carrying warheads designed specifically to disrupt their shielding technology. The same shields that had once made them invincible were now flickering, unstable. And then, humanity ambushed them. They had taken their earliest space stations, once peaceful research hubs, and turned them into hidden weapons platforms. Cannons that fired hypervelocity slugs tore through the unprepared Zorvath fleet, shredding ships before they could adjust. Experimental railguns, launched from repurposed satellites, pierced through hulls with terrifying precision. Every piece of technology stolen from the first encounter had been weaponized. The Zorvath commanders, still underestimating their enemy, believed this was nothing more than a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. They pressed forward, right into humanity's trap. As they entered Earth's orbit, something impossible happened. Humanity hacked their systems. For centuries, the Dominion had relied on superior electronic warfare to disable their enemies. They had assumed that a pre-spacefaring species would have no chance of breaching their defenses. But Earth's greatest warriors weren't just soldiers. They were hackers, engineers, and strategists, masters of digital warfare. The moment the Zorvath battlecruisers entered low orbit, their fleet-wide systems glitched, weapons misfired, communications collapsed, engines shut down. For a brief, terrifying moment, the unstoppable fleet was nothing more than sitting targets. And that was all the time humanity needed. The counterattack was merciless. A dozen Zorvath warships were obliterated in minutes. Others were disabled, their crews left to die in the vacuum of space. It was a massacre. The Dominion had come expecting to exterminate a primitive race. Instead, they had walked into a battlefield where every rule they knew had been rewritten. The surviving ships retreated in chaos. The First Interstellar War was over, and the galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented: humanity. A species that had been ignored, dismissed, and underestimated, had just defeated an empire that had existed for millennia. But the war had done something far worse than destroy the Zorvath fleet. It had announced humanity's presence to the entire galaxy, and out there, in the dark reaches of space, the other empires took notice. The Zorvath Dominion had suffered an unthinkable defeat. Their mighty fleet, designed to erase Earth from existence, had been shattered. A species that had only recently begun to touch the stars had turned their weapons back against them. The shockwaves of this battle rippled through the galactic community, reaching civilizations that had long believed humanity to be nothing more than an experiment, a mere curiosity. For the first time in galactic history, a primitive world had not just resisted, but outright humiliated a dominant power. The Zorvath had no choice but to retreat, leaving Earth untouched. But their defeat carried a consequence that was far more dangerous than mere military loss. They had exposed a weakness, and in the galaxy, weakness was a death sentence. The other, great empires, silent, hidden watchers from the void, took notice. Some saw an opportunity to eliminate the Zorvath entirely. Others saw a more valuable prize: humanity itself. On Earth, there was no celebration, no declaration of victory. The leaders of the world knew better. If one alien empire had come for them, others would follow. This was not the end. It was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. The silent war had begun. It started in the shadows, in the depths of space where no one could hear the screams. The Zorvath were still licking their wounds, their empire fractured, their leadership thrown into turmoil. They could not afford to attack Earth again. Not yet. So they turned to subtlety, using their knowledge of the galaxy to ignite a cold war that humanity would not even see coming. At first, the attacks were invisible. A malfunction aboard the first human-built warship, the Sovereign Dawn, led to a catastrophic explosion that killed its entire crew. The official report blamed human error. But deep within Earth's intelligence networks, analysts weren't so sure. Then came the disappearances. Entire deep space research stations vanished. No distress signals, no wreckage, just emptiness, as if they had never existed at all. And then came the whispers. Messages intercepted from distant outposts, fragments of communication from unknown alien species. Some offered alliances, others sent warnings. One phrase, repeated again and again in different languages, was decoded by human cryptographers. The wolves are watching. The first true sign of alien interference came when Earth's most advanced artificial intelligence, Project Argus, detected a foreign signal embedded deep within human military networks. At first, it was believed to be a cyber attack, until Argus uncovered something horrifying. It wasn't one signal. It was hundreds. Hidden deep within Earth's infrastructure, alien surveillance programs had been monitoring humanity for decades. Some belonged to the Zorvath, but others were completely unknown. The galaxy wasn't just watching humanity. It was studying them, testing them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Humanity had thought they were preparing for another invasion. They were wrong. The war had already begun, and they were losing. The gathering storm, the United Earth Defense Command, UEDC, declared a state of planetary emergency. The realization that Earth had been infiltrated by unseen forces forced a complete restructuring of planetary defenses. A new doctrine was established, one that went beyond mere survival. The best defense is total annihilation. Humanity would no longer wait to be attacked. If the galaxy wanted to play games in the shadows, then Earth would rewrite the rules. Global campaign of counter-surveillance began. The same hackers, engineers, and analysts who had once been confined to national security projects were now given full access to everything the world's governments knew about extraterrestrials. The best minds in cyber warfare worked day and night to hunt down and destroy every foreign signal embedded in Earth's networks. The results were terrifying. The deeper they looked, the more they found. Evidence that alien spies had been living among them for years, posing as humans, infiltrating governments, influencing policies. Some had even aided humanity's progress, subtly guiding technological advancements to prepare Earth for something greater. But who were they working for? The UEDC made a decision that changed everything. For decades, humanity had focused on expanding its reach into space. Now, it would turn its attention to hunting its enemies. Earth's first true interstellar strike force was assembled, the Black Dagger Division. Unlike the hastily built fleets that had defended Earth in the First Interstellar War, the Black Daggers were designed for one purpose: to take the fight beyond the solar system. Their mission was simple: track down and eliminate every alien spy, no matter where they were hiding. Locate the unknown civilizations that had been watching humanity, and hit them before they could hit Earth. Spread a message across the stars: humanity would never be prey again. Their first target was a name whispered in fear among intercepted alien transmissions: the Vroth Pact. Unlike the Zorvath, the Vroth were not conquerors. They were manipulators, masters of subterfuge. They did not wage wars with fleets. They waged them with whispers, sabotage, and assassinations. And their greatest mistake was thinking they could control humanity. The Black Dagger Division's first mission was a message to the galaxy. The covert strike team located a hidden Vroth facility orbiting a dying star, deep within uncharted space. Inside, they found something that shook them to their core. Human prisoners. Thousands of them. Civilians who had disappeared without explanation. Scientists, soldiers, politicians. All abducted, all experimented on. The facility was eradicated. No survivors, no distress signals. Only a single transmission was sent back to the galactic network, in every known alien language. Humanity is watching too. The galaxy expected humans to react with fear, to retreat, to beg for mercy. Instead, humanity had declared total war. The silent war was over. The real nightmare was about to begin. The galaxy had vastly underestimated humanity's resilience. They had expected fear, diplomacy, or perhaps even surrender. Instead, they had created something far worse. A species that had been pushed into a corner and had decided that survival alone wasn't enough. The Vroth Pact was the first to learn this hard lesson. Their influence had stretched across countless star systems, their whispers shaping wars before they even began. But their mistake was assuming that humanity could be controlled. The Black Dagger Division had shattered their illusions. Their greatest weapons, secrecy, deception, and subtlety, were turned against them. Within months, the entire Vroth intelligence network collapsed. Their sleeper agents on Earth were exposed and executed. Their deep space relays were hacked and fed misinformation. The UEDC, now operating in complete secrecy, manufactured evidence that turned the Vroth's own allies against them. Entire Vroth colonies, once protected in the shadows, were suddenly targeted by rival empires. The Vroth's downfall was swift and brutal, and when the last of their leadership tried to negotiate for peace, a single response was transmitted from Earth's military command: no mercy. The Vroth were exterminated, not conquered, not assimilated, erased, and the galaxy took notice. The First strike against Earth. With the Vroth Pact gone, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted violently. Major empires that had remained neutral suddenly saw Earth as a growing threat. If humanity had taken down an empire in months, what would they do in decades? The answer was clear. Humanity had to be stopped. The Galactic Concordat, a coalition of the most powerful civilizations in the known universe, made a decision in secret. Earth would not be allowed to rise any further. They would strike before humanity could become unstoppable. They called it Operation Starfall. A fleet of 20 warships, each carrying enough firepower to reduce Earth to ash, was assembled beyond the outer rim. These were not reckless warlords like the Zorvath, nor scheming manipulators like the Vroth. This was an armada of the galaxy's best and strongest. Their goal was simple: exterminate humanity before it became a galactic superpower. The attack was calculated, precise. The Concordat fleet did not rush in blindly like the Zorvath had. They disabled Earth's orbital defenses with EMP waves. They jammed all deep space communications, ensuring no distress signals could escape. And then, when they were sure Earth was vulnerable, they launched the invasion, the unseen defense, Earth's darkest secret. What the Galactic Concordat did not know, what no alien civilization had even considered, was that humanity had been preparing for this exact moment. The UEDC had learned from the past. They knew that the next war would not be fought in space. It would be fought in the very fabric of reality itself. And so, while the galaxy had been watching Earth's fleets and weapons, they had overlooked something far more terrifying: Project Abyss. The first phase of Project Abyss had been simple: deception. Earth had deliberately withheld its true military strength, allowing the galaxy to believe it was still recovering from the Zorvath War. Every military test, every fleet movement, every piece of intelligence that had leaked into the galactic network had been a lie. The second phase was something the galaxy was unprepared for. The first Concordat ships entered Earth's orbit and disappeared. Not destroyed, not damaged, vanished. Sensors detected nothing. No wreckage, no life signs, just emptiness. Panic spread through the Concordat fleet. Had they fallen into a trap? Yes. Earth's greatest weapon wasn't a fleet. It was the Abyss itself. The weapon that defied physics. For decades, Earth's greatest minds had been experimenting with spatial anomalies, quantum distortions, and exotic matter. They had learned that the universe was not as stable as the galaxy, believed, and then they had built the impossible: a planetary defense system that did not destroy incoming threats. It erased them from existence. A weapon that folded space upon itself, sending anything caught in its range into the void between realities. The Concordat fleet had unknowingly stepped into a trap woven from the very fabric of the universe. Entire warships, filled with thousands of soldiers, were swallowed by the Abyss. No explosions, no debris, just silence. Within minutes, half the invasion force was gone. The Concordat commanders, hardened warriors who had fought in wars for centuries, panicked. They had faced superweapons before, but nothing like this. They attempted to retreat. It was too late. Humanity's true fleet, one they had hidden from all known star charts, emerged from within the darkness of space. These were not ships built for defense. These were ships built for extermination. The Leviathan-class dreadnoughts moved with impossible precision, their hulls covered in adaptive camouflage, bending light itself to remain unseen. They had been watching, waiting, and now they struck. The remaining Concordat ships never stood a chance. Humanity did not fight with honor. They fought with cold, ruthless efficiency. One by one, the invaders were hunted down. And when the last Concordat battleship desperately tried to escape, Earth sent a single transmission: "We are not the underdogs anymore." The war was over before it had truly begun. The galaxy's new nightmare words spread across the stars like wildfire. Humanity had been tested, pushed to the brink, and had come back as something unrecognizable. They were no longer a species fighting for survival. They had become the very thing the galaxy feared most: an enemy that did not seek conquest, an enemy that did not negotiate, an enemy that could not be stopped. The Galactic Concordat, the largest and most powerful coalition in the known universe, had lost without even firing a shot. Humanity had become the dark legend whispered in alien tongues. Some civilizations immediately sued for peace, offering tributes and treaties. Others tried to flee, disappearing into the uncharted void of deep space. But there was no hiding from the new power that had risen in the shadows. The nightmare had only just begun. The galaxy was in shock. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive upstarts, barely worthy of recognition, had obliterated the Galactic Concordat's strongest armada without losing a single warship. No battles, no prolonged conflicts, just instant, irreversible annihilation. And now, the galaxy watched in terror as humanity made its next move, the Council's desperate plea. The surviving leaders of the Concordat gathered in a hidden stronghold deep within neutral space. Their faces, once filled with arrogance and confidence, were now etched with fear. They knew what was coming. They had misjudged humanity once. They would not survive misjudging them again. Some argued for an immediate surrender. Others proposed offering Earth the throne of the Concordat itself, hoping that giving them power would curb their thirst for vengeance. But the harshest voices in the room demanded war. Humanity is only a nightmare because we have allowed them to be one, growled the war minister of the Zixan Dominion. We must strike them now before they strike us next. The others listened. But they all knew the truth. There was no stopping what was coming. The Black Fleet awakens. For centuries, the galaxy had believed in order. There were laws, treaties, and understood limits. Even the most brutal wars had rules. Humanity had no such limitations. As the Concordat debated in secret, Earth was already moving. The UEDC did not waste time with declarations or negotiations. Their war was already underway. The Black Fleet, humanity's elite stealth armada, had been deployed across multiple star systems. These were not slow-moving battleships. These were ghosts. Cities vanished overnight. Military outposts went dark without a single distress call. Entire supply lines were cut. In the blink of an eye. The galaxy was used to wars of attrition, long sieges, drawn-out invasions. They had no concept of a species that fought like a predator in the dark. By the time the Concordat realized what was happening, it was already too late. The mass extinction protocol. There was no honor in what followed. No battles of valiant resistance. There was only the hunt. The Black Fleet did not conquer planets. It wiped them from existence. Their weapons did not leave survivors. Their attacks left nothing for history to record. Mass extinction protocols had been drafted long before the Zorvath War. Humanity had always known that if the galaxy turned against them, they could not afford to be merciful. The UEDC had a simple rule. If they came for Earth, then Earth would leave nothing of them behind. And so, one by one, entire species disappeared. The Vroth had already been erased. Now the Zorvath homeworlds, once teeming with life, were reduced to smoldering ruins. The towering megacities of the Syndic clans, which had stood for millennia, were now lifeless husks drifting through space. It was not war. It was extermination. The last stand of the Concordat Inn. A final act of desperation, the Concordat leaders gathered every remaining warship they had left. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Over 100,000 vessels from dozens of species. They knew they could not defeat humanity in a direct battle, but they hoped, prayed, that sheer overwhelming numbers would force humanity to negotiate, and so they sent a message to Earth. We surrender. We acknowledge your superiority. We only ask for terms. They waited. Hours passed. Then a response came through. It was not what they expected. The final transmission. The screen flickered to life. A human officer stood there, clad in a dark military uniform. His expression was unreadable. His voice, calm and composed. There will be no negotiations. A silence fell over the Concordat war room. Their greatest fleet, the last hope for their species, was poised for battle. And then, the stars themselves began to die. The wrath of the Leviathans. The true extent of humanity's power had never been revealed. The battleships, the stealth fleets, the planetary defenses, they were all distractions. The real nightmare had just arrived. The Leviathan-class war dreadnoughts emerged from the void, titanic war machines, each the size of a small moon. They had not been deployed in any previous battle. They had been waiting for this exact moment. The Concordat fleet, so vast that it stretched across an entire sector, was obliterated in minutes. The Leviathans unleashed weapons that defied physics itself. Entire squadrons were ripped apart before they could even fire. Massive capital ships, proud flagships of ancient civilizations, were torn from reality, their existence erased by weapons far beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. The Concordats' last hope became their mass grave, and as the final warship burned in the abyss, humanity sent one last message to the remaining worlds. A message etched into the ruins of the fallen empires. You should have left us alone. The battle was over before it had even begun. The Concordats' last stand, the grandest fleet ever assembled, had been reduced to cosmic debris in mere minutes. And yet, the true horror had only just begun. The silent aftermath. The galaxy was now eerily silent. The usual chatter between civilizations, the constant diplomatic negotiations, the subtle rivalries that had shaped interstellar politics for eons, all of it was gone. There were no more debates about humanity's place in the stars. There were no more species willing to oppose them. The Leviathan-class dreadnoughts drifted through the void like harbingers of an unstoppable force, their mere presence enough to break the will of entire star systems. Survivors of the Concordats' defeat, fragments of fleets that had managed to escape the massacre, limped back to their homeworlds, carrying only one message: surrender, or face extinction. The collapse of civilizations, panic spread like wildfire. Entire governments collapsed overnight. The realization was too much to bear. The once mighty Zixan Dominion, famed for its military prowess, did not even attempt to fight back. Their ruling caste, once proud and unyielding, disbanded their own empire rather than face humanity's wrath. Their grand fleets were abandoned in orbit, left to drift lifelessly as their species fled into the shadows. The Varine theocracy, a species that had once declared humanity a cosmic blasphemy, now begged for mercy. Their grand temples, where they once preached about their divine right to rule lesser species, were emptied overnight. Their sacred archives burned in desperation to erase any record of their past arrogance. The Syndic clans, ruthless in their pursuit of profit, simply vanished. They liquidated their assets, scattered their warlords across uncharted space, and abandoned their homeworlds before humanity could even reach them. And then, there were the ones who chose to fight anyway. The defiance of the last free worlds, and all civilizations were willing to bow. Some still clung to the hope that humanity could be stopped. The remnants of various empires, fierce warriors, brilliant scientists, and ancient tacticians banded together, forming the final accord. They knew that they were outmatched, outgunned, and outmaneuvered, but they refused to go quietly, and so they launched one last desperate gambit. The War of Shadows, the final accord, could not hope to match humanity in open combat. They did not have the fleets, the technology, or the strategic depth to mount a full-scale resistance, so they chose a different path. They turned to guerrilla warfare. Hidden bases were established deep within asteroid belts, cloaked outposts were built in the outer edges of dead systems, and suicide fleets were assembled, ships packed with antimatter warheads, designed for one purpose: to inflict as much damage as possible before they were destroyed. They targeted supply lines. They struck at human outposts in the dead of night. They used experimental technology, warping space-time to launch surprise attacks, vanishing before retaliation could arrive. They became ghosts in the void. For the first time since the war began, humanity faced an enemy that did not fight conventionally. The unleashing of the revenant core humanity did not tolerate defiance. When the final accord refused to surrender, Earth responded by unleashing its most terrifying force: the revenant core. They were not soldiers, they were hunters. Elite operatives enhanced beyond natural limits, equipped with technology that allowed them to bend light itself, rendering them invisible to sensors. They infiltrated enemy strongholds, eliminating leaders before they could even utter their next orders. They hacked into entire planetary networks, shutting down life support systems, crashing space stations, and turning entire cities into tombs of silent death. The war shifted once again. This time, it was humanity that fought from the shadows. The Final Accord's dream of resistance shattered. The end of the last rebellion. One by one, the Final Accord's hidden sanctuaries were found. One by one, their leaders vanished without a trace. The few who remained pleaded for mercy. There was none left to give. The last free world, once a stronghold of rebellion, was purged from existence in a single night. No survivors, no history left behind. It was as if they had never existed at all, and with that, the war was over. A galaxy under new rule. The old galactic order had fallen. The Concordat was no more. The Final Accord had been erased. All that remained was humanity. Earth did not rebuild the empires it had destroyed. It did not claim the thrones of the fallen. Instead, it left a single warning to the remaining species. A simple message, broadcast across every known communication network. The galaxy belongs to no one. But if you dare threaten us again, there will be no second warning. And then, just as swiftly as they had conquered, humanity vanished into the void. Their fleets retreated. Their forces disappeared. They did not rule. They did not occupy. They simply left. But every species knew the truth. The galaxy would never be the same again, and no one would ever dare challenge humanity again. The war was over, but the galaxy had never felt so afraid. Humanity had won. No empire stood in their way. No species dared to oppose their rule. But they did not claim the stars for themselves. They simply disappeared. No occupation fleets. No puppet governments. No new interstellar laws. Just silence. And in that silence, a far greater terror took root. The fear of the unknown. For the first time in recorded history, the great species of the galaxy found themselves living under a rule that did not exist. There were no tangible threats, no demands, no conquests. Humanity had made its point, and left. But now, the stars felt haunted. Outposts on the edges of the void reported strange occurrences. Ships vanishing without a trace. Entire research stations going dark overnight. Survivors, when there were any, spoke in whispers, of figures that moved in the darkness, of unseen forces that watched but never spoke. The remnants of the old galactic empires were left to rebuild in paranoia, always wondering when humanity might return, and what they would do next. And then, the disappearances became something else. The Forbidden Systems, it started with isolated frontier colonies. Remote settlements in deep space simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not abandoned, erased. Entire star systems, once bustling with life, were found empty. No bodies, no debris, no evidence of struggle. The planets remained untouched. The cities still stood. But the people were gone. Some believed it was humanity's warning. A way to remind the galaxy that they had not forgotten. Others whispered that the humans were no longer interested in simple conquest, that they were working towards something far worse. The return of the lost. Then, without explanation, the missing returned. Ships that had vanished reappeared as drifting husks, their crews still aboard, but wrong. Their eyes were glazed, their voices flat. They responded to no communication. Their minds were empty. It was as if something had hollowed them out. Something had reached into their very essence and taken what made them alive. The most horrifying part, they still breathed. Their hearts still beat. Their bodies still moved. But they were not there. Some began to theorize that humanity was no longer merely playing the role of conqueror. That perhaps they had moved beyond war, beyond politics, beyond anything the galaxy could comprehend. Perhaps they had discovered something far more terrifying than victory. Perhaps they had begun to reshape life itself. The fractured galaxy. The remaining civilizations, splintered into two factions. One group, known as the Pax Concordia, believed that surrender was the only way to ensure survival. They worshipped humanity as something greater than mere conquerors, something divine. They erased any history of resistance, forbade all mention of past wars, and pledged themselves to humanity's unseen rule. They broadcast messages into the void, pleading for humanity to hear them, to guide them, to lead them. But humanity did not respond. The second faction, calling itself the Last Light, believed that humanity must be destroyed at any cost. They had seen the disappearances. They had witnessed the empty-eyed husks of the returned. They knew that something far worse than simple domination was happening. And so they prepared. They scavenged ancient weapons. They dug deep into the ruins of fallen civilizations, searching for anything that could be used against an enemy that could no longer be understood. They were willing to commit atrocities, to burn entire worlds, to sacrifice their own if it meant stopping whatever humanity had become. But they did not know where to strike, because no one had seen a human in years, until someone did. The echo of humanity, a distress signal. Faint, almost lost in the static of the cosmos. A lone vessel drifted in the remains of a dead system, one that had been purged by humanity long ago. A reconnaissance team from the Last Light was dispatched. What they found was impossible. A human, or at least something that looked like one, suspended in a containment field, its body barely held together, its flesh shifting, unstable. It was muttering, repeating something over and over, a whisper in the dark, a secret that had never been meant to leave Earth's domain. And when they finally decoded its message, they realized why humanity had vanished, why they had never ruled, never settled, never returned to claim the galaxy. They were not waiting. They were hiding. Because something had gone wrong. Something had turned on them. Something had escaped. And now, it was no longer just humanity that was in danger. Now, it was everything. The interrogation chamber was silent. The team from the Last Light watched in frozen terror as the being in the containment field continued muttering the same phrase, over and over. Its voice cracked and strained, distorted. Whisper, crawling through the air like a parasite burrowing into their minds. At first, the words made no sense. A warning? A plea? A prayer? Then, a translation, and the realization that followed was something far, far worse. We were wrong. The figure in the containment field convulsed. Its flesh rippled, shifting like liquid, and then it spoke clearly. Its voice was not its own. You should not have come here. The crew recoiled, weapons raised, but deep down they knew. Nothing they carried could stop this, because this was not human. Not anymore. It had once been, but it had seen something, learned something, and whatever it had left a mark on humanity itself. The experiment that changed everything for centuries, the galaxy had believed that humanity had simply evolved, that they had gone from underdogs to apex predators through war, cunning, and resilience, that their ferocity, their unbreakable will, was what had allowed them to rise to dominance. They were wrong. Humanity's greatest leap had not come from conquest. It had come from science. Long before their first interstellar war, Earth's brightest minds had sought to push beyond the limits of biological existence. To transcend. They did not want to rule the stars. They wanted to control reality itself. It began with experiments in consciousness transfer, quantum memory storage, and artificial neural integration. But somewhere along the way, they found something else, something that should not have existed. The forbidden equation. The words of the captive human became more erratic, fragments of a story that had been buried. We reached beyond the edge, and something reached back. No one in the chamber moved. The air felt thicker. We thought we could rewrite the code of existence, but it was never ours to rewrite. Their experiment had worked. They had opened the next step in human evolution. But in doing so, they had awakened something that had been dormant. Something that did not belong in the material world. Something that now lived within them. The real reason humanity disappeared. The wars had been a distraction, a smokescreen. Humanity had not abandoned the galaxy because they were finished conquering it. They had left because they were running from something that had already infected them, something that was changing them, and now After centuries of silence, after the whispers and disappearances, after the hollowed-out survivors and empty star systems, humanity's greatest secret was finally being revealed. They were no longer fighting wars. They were fighting themselves. The final transmission. The containment field shattered. The human, or what remained of it, began to unravel. Its body dissolved into shifting tendrils of thought, light, and something beyond comprehension. A virus of existence itself. And before the crew of the last light could react, the station's emergency beacon activated. A signal burst outward, across the entire galaxy. Every surviving species, every empire, every hidden colony, every lost world, heard it. A single message, not from the creature, not from the ship, but from humanity itself. We were wrong. It is awake. Run. And then, darkness. The galaxy had feared the wrong thing all along. It was never humanity they should have been afraid of. It was what humanity had unleashed. And now, it was too late. The final question. If even humanity, the greatest force of terror the galaxy had ever known, was powerless to stop it, what chance did anyone else have? Tell me. What would you do? Would you fight? Would you run? Or would you simply wait for the end? Because one thing is certain, it is coming. And this time, there is no stopping it. Like, share, and subscribe to HFY Chronicles-849 for more mind-bending sci-fi stories. What do you think happened to humanity? Drop your theories in the comments below.